back again. We've got your painkillers ready this week, because this is about as agonising as spinal surgery. Despite the agonising viewing we are going through today, there is an upside. Namely that there's none of the nonsense from Numenor, nor is there anything from those stupid hobbits. Anyway, Celebrimbor is still under the influence of Sauron's vision. As far as he's concerned, he's living in a world of peace and light and not a problem at all, and so he's carrying on making the rings. Meanwhile, Eregion is burning as the orcs attack. There's a comment from one of the elves about more elves die, which is a bit stupid, because given that we already have a reference to Valar, it's not like they're keeping the Valar out of the talk at all. It's well known to elves what happens when they die. They don't die. They go to be in the halls of Mandos. The way the elf is talking about it, it's as though they've just end, that there's nothing beyond for them. But the whole point of their existence and how it juxtaposes with man is that their souls go to the halls of Mandos. They're given a new body, and then they get to live the rest of their life in Aman, the land of Valinor, with the Valar. So it's not just a death. We don't know what happens to man, hence why men are so concerned about what happens when they die, and why we'll end up seeing the attack on Valinor, because the aim, in the book at least, is to claim eternal life, because they think that living in the land of the Valar is what it is. But anyway, treating death in the wrong way by the elves aside, we move on. Merdania, the Galadriel-alike, and Sauron are continuing to be shipped for this. There is some good news to come, however. But we'll move on. Sauron says to Merdania that she's shown her quality. Yes, they still can't write a single original thing, it would seem. Anyway, the orc catapults are attacking the mountain now. They've stopped attacking the city, and they're now attacking the mountain. Why? Because they're going to block the river. Now, if the river is too big for them to walk across, given how wide it's shown to be, that would suggest it's fairly deep. That would mean it should take a fairly long time, even if this is a realistic method of dealing with it. But in no time at all, the catapults have hit rock out of the mountainside. It's blocked up the river, so it's all dammed up, and the river then very quickly is kind of dry. I mean, yes, it's muddy. We see that as they go through the walking over it, but the water has stopped very quickly. Something else to note: when we dam rivers right now, that creates a rise in water level. That's why when you create reservoirs and things, if there's a settlement in the area, it needs to be cleared away, because the water level is going to rise and the buildings are going to go underwater. And then the water's got to go somewhere in the end anyway. It's not like the water just stops. But that seems to be what the water is being done with here. So physics be damned. Anyway, Lemonless turns up just in time to see it, and that's where we leave it for the time being. Back with the dwarves. Durin wants the mine that Durin and Disa are protesting at to be cleared. He wants them out the way so he can carry on making money. Now, why, given the short space of time we're dealing with, this is such a big thing, I don't know. But apparently, in this really short space of time since they've been causing problems, he's lost a lot of gold. And he's really, really angry about that. Anyway, He sends his advisor with some troops to go and get rid of them, but Durin's advisor decides to side with Durin and Disa, and then they meet Elrond, who's come to knock at the door saying he needs some help. Now, don't know about you, but I'm fairly certain I commented on Elrond losing his cloak in the last episode. Well, he's got one again now, and I've got no idea how, given that he basically ran all the way back to Lindon, and then will have set off straight away from Lindon to get to Khazad-dûm to ask for help. Who knows? They don't seem to understand the passage of time, really, do they? Anyway, Elrond says that he wants Durin to bring the dwarves to help with the Battle of Eregion. Well, as I said, the river is now relatively dry. Therefore, the orcs are able to start running across it now as they attack Eregion. Celebrimbor has noticed that the vision is a vision. He seems to pay attention to a mouse for far too long, and the mouse is doing exactly the same thing. It's kind of like the whole Neo notices the glitch in the Matrix with the black cat and saying deja vu. So Sauron's vision is the Matrix now, I guess. Anyway, he confronts Sauron about this, and he throws Feanor's hammer at Sauron, which then breaks a window behind him, which then lets sound in, thus breaking the vision or the mind control that is going on. Turns out that the mithril ore that Sauron turned up with to give him to use was nothing of the sort, but actually Sauron's blood. If Sauron's blood is what is used to give to him, why did he go to try and get mithril from the dwarves in the first place? We're back to this whole stupid idea of Sauron has one plan and then changes it to another and then another and then another, when clearly he actually didn't have that. He had one plan in place all the time. It's just he was going along and doing these other things instead beforehand. It really doesn't make any sense to this character's motivations at all. Anyway, with all of this going on, and the fact that Sauron's blood is black and gooey, kind of like how Sauron appeared at the start of this series, but that's no surprise, Celebrimbor realises that Sauron is Sauron, not Annatar. Then we have the best bit of the episode. And it is truly a good bit. It is one good bit amongst a whole raft of direness. Celebrimbor goes out of his tower. He goes onto the ramparts. He challenges what's going on, saying that they need to arrest Sauron. And Medania refuses and seems to be suggesting that he's not with it, because that's what Sauron has told her and the others. So Celebrimbor is trying to kind of reason with her, and he gets more desperate, and he's trying to react physically to her with what's going on. Sauron, with a flick of his wrist, because apparently now he can use telekinesis, he knocks Medania down. She lands on the floor right by an orc, who proceeds to hack at her very, very nicely with an axe. Sadly, we don't get to see it, but we hear the crunch of the axe. Very satisfying. And just as all this is going on, we then hear the sound of an advancing army. No, it's not the dwarves. We have nothing from the dwarves yet. This is the army of Lindon. The army of elves, who, if you remember from the beginning of Lord of the Rings, the film, right in there in the whole start of the whole debacle with the ring, the elves stand there and they're basically just swatting away orcs as they swing their blades. So clearly these orcs are in for a very, very tough fight now. They're going to get wiped out by these elves who are at the height of their power. Well, no, because amongst other things, we've got the diverse batch of Noldorin elves who don't look like they come from the same clan of elves at all. But I guess we're about to find out how they lost their wide and varied racial appearances. Elrond leads the charge, which is a bit strange because it's him and not Gil-galad, but ho-hum. So Adar then pulls out his main trick just as they're coming up. What happens is that he reveals that they have Galadriel. They reveal Galadriel in a cage with a blade at her neck, and this threat causes the charge on the horses to stop. And then we have a parley between Adar and Elrond, and apparently Adar knows everything that's going on in Eregion because he talks about everything as though he knows. He knows how Sauron got in there. He knows that Eregion has fallen. The elves don't. And you'd think the elves would know what's going on in their own city, but no, they don't know. But Adar knows everything. Anyway, there is a brief comment from the orc we discovered to first have a family in a previous episode, who's not wanting to fight. He says again that he doesn't want to fight. He's worried about the loss of life. And then, just as Elrond is about to leave, he's apparently going to leave Galadriel to her fate. Elrond and Galadriel kiss now. Yes, it would appear Galadriel is cheaper than a visit to the red light district. We'll find out a little bit more about why they kiss in a minute, but did they really need to kiss? Did they really? There's been nothing between them so far, so all of a sudden they decide to throw it in your face. Anyway, Elrond leaves and he's chatting with the other guy who was with him. And there's so much flitting around between Elvish and Common. They decide that they're going to speak in Elvish to hide it from the orcs about the plan, because Elrond's going to send his friend off to the dwarves. And then right at the end, he says something about what he's going to do, and he says it in the Common language that the orcs would understand. It makes a complete mockery of anything that's been going on before now. Back in Khazad-dûm, Durin, that's Prince Durin, is stirring up the diverse dwarves, and we see the diversity that is on display that are going to fight and rebel against King Durin and his obsession with gold to try and help the elves of Eregion. We do see that King Durin has left his throne room and he's taken a massive axe with him, so there could be danger in the future. Let's wait and see. Right, Elrond, it seems, is doing a lot of travelling today. Not only has he gone from Eregion to Khazad-dûm to plead for the dwarves' help, he's now managed to get back to Eregion. And, well, he's fighting the orcs outside now. So, yeah, I guess Elrond is is the arch fighter now. He's swirling around with his blade. He's hitting things left, right, and centre. He finally fights an orc who is a bit of a challenge for him. The orc kills his horse. Elrond kills him, pins him to a catapult, and then unleashes the catapult. And, well, we then see that the orcs are on the Eregion walls, but they are trying and failing to break them. The orcs moan at Adar. They're letting too many die, apparently. Apparently the orcs are worried about dying. Anyway, Galadriel's managed to escape, and it turns out it was something that Elrond gave her when he was kissing her. Again, why he had to kiss her, to give her this, what looks like it would be a brooch for a cloak or something like that. But she was able to use that to pick the lock. And she's escaped. And she's now disguised herself in a cloak. Yes, a cloak is hiding Galadriel, the blonde woman who's going to stand out a mile off. Anyway, we then have another callback. Galadriel is made to help the female orcs. She has to join in with them, just like Sam and Frodo have to join in with the orcs in Mordor. Then we have more kind of humanizing of Adar and the orcs. Adar is giving the orcish equivalent of last rites to the dead orcs. And then she finally escapes, and there were some that were chasing after her, and she was about to get attacked when Don Lemonless appears, and he saves Galadriel. And he then says he wants to kill Adar, but Galadriel tells him no. So Diverse Elf saves blonde Lady Boss Elf, and then Lady Boss Elf saves Diverse Elf. What could be better? Back in Khazad-dûm, nice little quick segue, we discover that King Durin is attacking the dwarves. Yes, the King Dwarf has decided that because his people are not going to give him the gold anymore, he's going to start attacking them. And apparently his massive axe was able to swipe through all of the dwarves that were there. So his advisor has come to Prince Durin with lots of blood on him, saying he's causing a major problem. He's gone down to the mine, and there's then a comment of, no, Disa, as though he's worried that, only about Disa at this point rather than thinking about the bigger picture. Anyway, it would seem that Prince Durin has got to choose between Eregion and Khazad-dûm, because all of a sudden they're all talking about this worrisome monster that's in the deep that we all know is the Balrog, but they should have absolutely no knowledge of, because they know nothing about it until they dig it up in the Third Age. Back in Celebrimbor's workshop, Sauron is now claiming that he was used and abused by Morgoth. He talks about his sufferings while getting Celebrimbor to make the rings, kind of trying to say, I wish I didn't have to do this to you, but I need to in order to fix things. Because now we're trying to make Sauron a more understandable and maybe acceptable character, because yes, the left always want to make the bad into good. Celebrimbor, after finishing the rings, then decides, with Sauron not being there, he's going to try and destroy them, so he throws them into the fire. Quick trip back to Elrond fighting again before we then get back to the rings. I don't know why they kept on flitting around like this quite as much as they did, but anyway, Celebrimbor finds out that the rings won't melt. Funny that. Anyway, he tries escaping from his shackles, and he can't, so he cuts off his thumb, kind of hinting at similar stories we've had, the obvious one being Frodo, when he loses a finger in his fight with Gollum, but also harkening back to the story of his uncle, Maedhros, who, in order to escape from being shackled at the top of a mountain above Morgoth's fortress, because he can't get the shackle off his arm, well, off his wrist, because they can't get the shackle off the rock, the mountain. He chops his hand off, like we're seeing with the chopping the thumb off as the only way to get out. On the one hand, you might say that, okay, this is a fairly interesting manoeuvre to do, but at the same time, because it's harkening back to two very, very well-known stories within the mythos of Middle-earth, it's just, again, desperate writing. He escapes, and then he's recaptured, only for Galadriel to turn up and tell them that, no, Celebrimbor's the one in charge, not Sauron. Well, Anatar, as they keep on referring to him at this point. And as soon as Galadriel says that he's the true Lord of Eregion, they change their minds completely. No problems at all. Okay, because you say so, Galadriel, we'll follow what you say, rather than the person that we've been trusting and who has seemingly been looking after us all this time during the battle. Celebrimbor then sends Galadriel away and tells her to take the 9 rings away rather than him to take them away. And then he says that he'll cause problems for Sauron that'll hold him up. And the guards say that they're with him. They'll support him because clearly being told by Galadriel that they need to start obeying him is all they needed to become the most loyal elves imaginable. Back at the battle, Elrond tells his Archer-Eye Diversity that she's great. Yes, he basically tells her that she's the most important person on that battlefield at that particular point. All she needs to do is to fire 1 arrow and everything's going to be sorted. And then she gets peppered with arrows from orcs. I was really hoping that this would be the end and then Elrond would have to do something kind of spectacular. But no, she's so great that she's strong enough, even with lots of arrows in her, to get off one last shot before she's shot again herself, and that shot sends a fire arrow to where it will blow up the orcs' major kind of armory. It's something that's destroying the wall, a ravager, they call it. Anyway, this is the last straw for Adar. He sends for the troll boss. Back inside Eregion, Celebrimbor and his guard friends go and challenge Sauron. And Sauron all of a sudden has mind control on all of the guards, to the point which he can make them kill each other. So they stand with their swords all pointing at Sauron to threaten him, only for them to then be controlled so that they point the swords at each other and they stab each other and all fall to the ground dead. Interesting that all it took was 1 stab from their own blades and they're dead, whereas Diverse Archer was able to take many arrows before she finally fell down. Anyway, he does that. There's 1 remaining guard who then takes a stab, misses, stays down in the position because clearly I guess he's now being controlled as well. Sauron takes the blade from his hand and cuts his throat. All the guards are dead. All we have now is Sauron and Celebrimbor. The final scene of this episode. The troll boss is killing orcs and elves alike. I can't recall if we could actually tell what it was, but there is a point at which he bites the head off one of the ones that he's got in his hand, just tearing it right off in his mouth. The orcs are not happy. The orcs are not pleased that this is what's going on with the troll boss. Elrond then has to start attacking the troll boss because something needs to happen. And after lots of arrows coming down at him, it would seem that Elrond is the last hope. and he gets swatted away like a fly. So then we have some elves coming in on horseback, and Gil-galad trips him with a chain that's hooked into his heel, and then Lemanus, a la Legolas in the Mines of Moria, jumping on a troll. Lemanus does the same as well, and Trollboss is dead. And then Adar charges. And as per all of this stuff so far, the orcs are not all happy orcs attacking. We have that kind of wimpy orc, I should say, who's been moaning all the way through about all the death that's going on. And as he charges, the sun seems to be rising, and Elrond is convinced the dwarves are coming, but they're not. The guy he sent to get them, to make sure that they came in the right place at the right time, he's been hit by orc arrows, and he says about the decision by the dwarves to return to Khazad-dûm. There's no reason giving as to why. It would appear that all he saw was the dwarves returning rather than having an explanation being given. But anyway, it's down to the elves and the elves only. Gil-galad leads the charge, and within the opening seconds of this charge, 2 elves are killed easily. Remember, these are elves at the height of their powers. It's not long since they were in Beleriand, the land that caused them to be raised above the stature of the elves that refused to travel into Beleriand. Even the elves that didn't make it to a man, they were raised above the elves that refused to travel to Beleriand, even though they'd never been across the sea to see the Valar. These elves, mostly Noldor, who would have been in Valinor at one point, at the height of their powers, the height of their strength, and you've got 2 killed in seconds. But there is good news. There is some very good news. Lemanus, finally, it would appear, is dead. He's caught by Adar, stabbed and killed, and that's it. And then the walls finally fall. We have our final major confrontation. Adar meets Elrond. Is Elrond going to survive? Yes, of course he is, because he makes it into the film. He has to. But Adar beats him easily, and he steals his ring, and he doesn't kill him for some reason. The only reason he's not killing him at this point has to surely be because of plot armor. He has to survive because he survives. And there we have it. Adar has a ring, Elrond has been defeated, and the elves are looking perilously close to getting wiped out. The dwarves aren't anywhere to be seen, and well, I mean, I suppose at least we find out how we now no longer have the diverse elves of the Noldor, how they're all white with dark hair. It would appear it's because they all got wiped out in this battle. Those terrible orcs killed off all those diverse elves. It's a real shame. A final note to make, though. The ending music was utter garbage. It was some kind of screamer music, which, this is Tolkien. Tolkien is not screamer music. If something bad has happened, you have a lament. You don't have a screamer band playing. But as I say, this is just agonising viewing from beginning to end, save for the points where we had 2 very, very welcome deaths. Last episode next week. How can they possibly make it worse? Well, We know they can. We know they will. It's just what they're going to do to make it so.